The house was already mine. I am Emily, 32, and every month I match recorded beneficiary designations against settlement statements for 18 residential closings. Aunt Diane gathered 13 relatives in a private alcove at an Italian restaurant on Marchetti Boulevard, set a pre-printed deed beside the tiramisu, and said, "Sign this, sweetheart, and Grandpa's house stays in the family." The house was already mine. Grandpa recorded a payable-on-death designation 6 years before he died, and Diane's attorney left the beneficiary line blank on every document she brought tonight. They ordered the lobster and the $40 wine. I asked for 1 glass of tap water and drank every drop. Before I tell you what the check presenter did to Diane's face, drop your city and local time below. I need to take you back 7 years, to a Tuesday in November when I was 25 and sitting in a windowless records room on the 3rd floor of the Hargrove County Title Building, learning how to read a chain of title from a woman named Ruth Kessler. Ruth was 63, retired from full-time examining, but contracted 4 days a week because, in her words, the young hires could not tell a warranty deed from a grocery receipt. She kept a chipped ceramic mug on the corner of her desk and poured black coffee into it every morning at 6:15. No sugar, no cream, no discussion. She let me drink from the same pot. She never asked me about my weekend. She asked me whether the notary stamp on page 11 matched the commission number in the county registry, and if I said yes without checking, she made me pull the file and start over. That was the education. Not a degree, not a corner office, a windowless room, cold toner smell on the copier, and a woman who treated a misfiled lien like a personal insult. I learned that a recorded document is a physical thing. It has a date, a stamp, a clerk's initials, a microfilm reference number. It does not care about your feelings. It does not care about your family. It sits in a drawer or a server, and it says what it says until someone with authority says otherwise. I built my whole working life around that principle. The paper is the truth. The story people tell you about the paper is noise. The Wilson family, my family, ran on story. My father, Robert, was the middle child, the quiet one, the one who fixed the porch and changed the oil and never once raised his voice at Thanksgiving. His older sister, Diane, was the loud one, the one who cried beautifully at funerals and borrowed money with the confidence of a woman collecting a debt she was owed. Her son, Tyler, was the golden child, the grandson who got the new truck at 17 and the down payment help at 24, and the "Tyler is just finding himself" excuse at 29. I was the granddaughter who got a handshake and a reminder that family helps, which in the Wilson vocabulary meant I helped and they received. By the time I was 23, I had co-signed a car loan for Tyler that he defaulted on in 14 months. I had covered Diane's share of a family vacation rental in Gatlinburg that she canceled 3 days before check-in. I had driven 4 hours to help my Uncle Gerald move a sectional couch into a 3rd-floor walk-up because you were the only one with a truck, even though I did not own a truck and had borrowed one from a coworker. Every transaction followed the same architecture. They needed, I provided. Nobody said thank you. The next need arrived on schedule, like a subscription renewal I never authorized. My wallet was a vending machine. Insert guilt, receive check. Insert a sad story about Tyler's rent, receive another transfer. When the machine broke, when I finally said the word no out loud, they unplugged it and walked away. The no happened on a Sunday in March. Diane called at 9 in the morning and asked me to transfer $9,000 to cover a balloon payment on a rental property she and her husband, Craig, had purchased in Tyler's name. She said it casually, the way you ask someone to pass the salt. I was eating toast. I set the toast down. I said, "I cannot do that, Diane." 3 words. No speech, no lecture. Just a sentence. The silence on the other end lasted 4 seconds. Then she said, "Your grandfather is rolling in his grave," and hung up. Grandpa wasn't rolling anywhere. Grandpa was 81, alive, sitting in his 2-bedroom bungalow in Linden Street, watching a baseball game, and had no idea Diane used his name as a guilt lever over a phone call. But the damage was structural. Within a week, my father called to say Diane was very hurt. Within 2 weeks, Gerald stopped returning my texts. Within a month, I was removed from the family group chat. Within 2 months, I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. The exile lasted 3 years. 3 years of silence, so complete, I assumed they had simply decided I was a subscription they no longer needed. If you've ever been the person in a family who gives and gives until someone finally asks why you stopped, and the answer is simply that you ran out of money to give, subscribe to this channel because this story is for you. Those 3 years were the quietest of my life and the most productive. I kept my job at Hargrove Title. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen window that faced a parking lot and a landlord who fixed a faucet within a day of my calling. I opened a savings account and deposited a fixed amount on the first of every month. I bought a used Honda with 91,000 miles on it and made every payment on time. I ate dinner alone most nights, and the silence in that apartment wasn't lonely. It was mine. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to calculate whether my yes would be followed by a larger ask next quarter. I could sit on the couch with a glass of tap water, no ice, no lemon, and read a book, and the evening belonged to me. Grandpa called me every other Sunday during those 3 years. He did not ask about the family drama. He asked about the weather. He asked whether the Honda needed new tires. He told me about the tomato plants on his back porch and whether the squirrels had gotten to them. He never once asked me to fix anything for him. He never once handed me a bill. In his final year, he told me over the phone, in his flat, unhurried voice, that he had taken care of the house. I asked what he meant. He said, "I went to the county clerk. The house is yours when I go. It is written down." I thanked him. He said, "You do not need to thank me. You were the only one who never tried to take it from me while I was still breathing." That was in August. He died in October, quietly, in his sleep, with the baseball game on the television and a half-eaten sandwich on the kitchen counter. The funeral was small. I went. Diane was there, crying beautifully, working the line of condolences like a woman campaigning. Tyler stood behind her in a suit that still had the crease from the store. They did not speak to me. I did not speak to them. I signed the guest book, shook hands with 2 of Grandpa's neighbors, and drove home. 4 months after the funeral, the invitation arrived. Not a text, not a phone call, a printed card, cream-colored with a restaurant address on Marchetti Boulevard, and the words, "The Wilson Family Gathering to honor the memory of Frank Wilson." The date was a Saturday, 3 weeks out. At the bottom, in Diane's handwriting, a single line, "Emily, it is time we put things right. Please come. Grandpa would want us together." I should not have gone. I want to be clear about that. Every procedural instinct I had, the same instinct that made me check a notary's commission before I stamped a closing, told me the invitation was a transaction dressed in sentimentality. But Grandpa's name was on the card, Frank Wilson, the man who poured coffee into a chipped mug and never asked me to pay for it. I put the card in my jacket pocket next to the unsharpened pencil I carried by habit from the records room, and I went. The restaurant was called Bellini's, mid-tier Italian, white tablecloths, imported olive oil in small glass bottles, a wine list that went to $60 a bottle. I arrived at 6:15, 15 minutes before the reservation time, because I have spent 7 years showing up early to closings, and old habits don't dissolve just because you're walking into a family ambush instead of a title office. I parked the Honda in the lot and counted the cars. 4 SUVs, 3 sedans, 2 pickup trucks, a silver minivan with a bumper sticker that read, "My kid is an honor student at Westfield Middle." 11 vehicles, 13 people at minimum. Diane had not organized a dinner, she had organized a tribunal. Grandpa called me every other Sunday during those 3 years. He did not ask about the family drama. He asked whether the weather was good. He asked whether the Honda needed new tires. He told me about the tomato plants on his back porch and whether the squirrels had gotten to them. He never once asked me to fix anything for him. He never once handed me a bill. In his final year, he told me over the phone, in his flat, unhurried voice, that he had taken care of the house. I asked what he meant. He said, "I went to the county clerk. The house is yours when I go. It is written down." I thanked him. He said, "You do not need to thank me. You were the only one who never tried to take it from me while I was still breathing." That was in August. He died in October, quietly in his sleep, with a baseball game on the television and a half-eaten sandwich on the kitchen counter. The funeral was small. I went. Diane was there, crying beautifully, working the line of condolences like a woman campaigning. Tyler stood behind her in a suit that still had the crease from the store. They did not speak to me. I did not speak to them. I signed the guest book, shook hands with 2 of Grandpa's neighbors, and drove home. 4 months after the funeral, the invitation arrived. Not a text, not a phone call, a printed card, cream-colored, with the restaurant address on Marchetti Boulevard and the words, "The Wilson Family Gathering to honor the memory of Frank Wilson." The date was a Saturday, 3 weeks out. At the bottom, in Diane's handwriting, a single line, "Emily, it is time we put things right. Please come. Grandpa would want us together." I should not have gone. I want to be clear about that. Every procedural instinct I had, the same instinct that made me check a notary commission before I stamped a closing, told me the invitation was a transaction dressed in sentimentality. But Grandpa's name was on the card, Frank Wilson, the man who poured coffee into a chipped mug and never asked me to pay for it. I put the card in my jacket pocket next to the unsharpened pencil I carried out of habit from the records room, and I went. The restaurant was called Bellini's, mid-tier Italian. White tablecloths, imported olive oil in small glass bottles, a wine list that went to $60 a bottle. I arrived at 6:15, 15 minutes before the reservation time, because I've spent 7 years showing up early to closings, and old habits don't dissolve just because you're walking into a family ambush instead of a title office. I parked the Honda in the lot and counted the cars. 4 SUVs, 3 sedans, 2 pickup trucks, a silver minivan with a bumper sticker that read, "My kid is an honor student at Westfield Middle." 11 vehicles, 13 people at minimum. Diane had not organized a dinner, she had organized a tribunal. I turned to the second page. At the bottom, in Diane's handwriting, a note. Once she signs the deed at dinner, she will not dare contest it in front of everyone. Tyler handles the title transfer Monday. Do not let her leave without signing. I stood in that corridor for 11 seconds. I know it was 11 because I counted them, the way Ruth taught me to count the seconds before a notary stamp dries. 1, 2, 3, 4. The paper is the truth. 5, 6, 7. The story they tell you is noise. 8, 9, 10, 11. I folded the note back into the handbag. I zipped the bag closed. I walked to the restroom. I washed my hands. I dried them. I smoothed the front of my blouse. I walked back down the corridor, past the hostess station, past the ficus with the missing leaves, and I sat down in the wobbly chair near the service door. I picked up my glass of tap water. No ice, no lemon. I took 1 sip. I set the glass down and aligned it with the edge of the table. If you have ever had a family member treat your hard work like an open bank account, type the word boundaries in the comments right now. The table talked around me for another 20 minutes. Gerald asked Craig about the timeshare. Craig explained the amortization schedule with the enthusiasm of a man selling a timeshare. Tyler showed a cousin something on his phone, and the cousin laughed too loudly. Diane refilled her wine glass from the second bottle. Nobody looked at me. I was the wobbly chair. I was the service door draft. I was the gap in the conversation where a name should have been. At 9:40, Diane raised her glass and tapped it twice with a fork. The sound cut through the murmur. 14 faces turned toward the head of the table. She smiled. It was her funeral smile, the one she deployed at viewings and holiday dinners with equal precision. She said, "Before we get to dessert, I want to say a few words about Grandpa, about what he meant, about what family means." She paused for effect. She held the pause for 3 seconds. She looked at me. She said, "And I want to thank Emily for being here tonight. I know the last few years have been hard, but family heals. Family forgives. And tonight, we're going to settle Grandpa's affairs the way he would have wanted, together." A few relatives murmured agreement. Gerald nodded. Tyler looked up from his phone for the first time in an hour. Diane set her glass down and reached under the table. I heard the zip of a leather portfolio. She placed a manila envelope on the tablecloth, between the breadbasket and the tiramisu, right next to the tiramisu. The same spot, the same casual placement, as if a legal instrument transferring ownership of a dead man's home were a dinner mint. She said, "Emily, I need you to come here and sign this. It is a simple family settlement agreement. It transfers Grandpa's house into a shared family trust so we can maintain it together. You will still have access. You will always be welcome. But the responsibility, the taxes, the upkeep, the insurance, it becomes a family obligation instead of one person carrying it all. I think that is fair. I think Grandpa would agree." She slid the envelope 3 inches toward me. She smiled. She waited. I did not move. I sat in the wobbly chair near the service door, and I looked at the envelope, and I looked at Diane, and I felt the glass of tap water in front of me, cold and plain, and I thought about Ruth Kessler in her windowless room saying, "The paper is the truth, the story is noise." Diane was giving me a story, a trust, a shared obligation, a family healing. The paper, the actual paper, was a quitclaim deed transferring sole ownership to a trust controlled by Diane, with Tyler listed as the primary beneficiary and my name appearing nowhere except on the signature line at the bottom of page 3. I said, "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom again." Diane's smile tightened. She said, "Of course, sweetheart, but when you come back, we need to handle this." I stood. I walked past the ficus with the missing leaves. I walked past the hostess station. I did not go to the restroom. I walked to the service counter where a floor manager in a black vest was reviewing a reservation tablet. His name tag read Marco. He looked up. I placed my hands flat on the counter, aligned my fingers with the edge of the wood, and I said 2 sentences. The first was, "I am at table 14 in the back alcove, and I would like to settle my individual cover now, separate from the master check." The second was, "Please route the entire remaining balance, all food, all alcohol, all service charges, to the Visa card on file under Diane Wilson, which was used to make the reservation." Marco looked at the tablet. He tapped twice. He said, "The reservation is under Diane Wilson, party of 14, card ending in 4722. You want your cover separated and the rest locked to her card." I said, "Yes, and I would like to leave a 35% tip on my portion for the server." He nodded. He processed it. He printed my receipt. I signed it. My cover was $23. Tap water, no food. The tip was $8.05. I folded the receipt, put it in my jacket pocket next to the unsharpened pencil, and walked back to the table. I sat down. I picked up my water glass. I took 1 sip. I set it back down, aligned with the table edge. Diane was watching me. She said, "Are you ready?" I said, "I am ready." She opened the manila envelope. She pulled out 3 pages. She set them in front of me. She handed me a pen. The pen was heavy, brass-barreled, engraved with a real estate company logo. Diane's discount attorney, a man named Paul Sorensen, sat 4 chairs down near the middle of the table, watching me with the expression of a man who had already spent his commission fee. He nodded at me. He smiled. He said, "It is straightforward, Emily. Just sign at the bottom of page 3, initial the top 2 pages, standard trust formation." I looked at the pages. I looked at the signature line. I looked at the notary block at the bottom. The notary field was blank. There was no stamp. There was no commission number. There was no expiration date. The document had been prepared for signature, but no notary had been present when it was drafted. It was, in the language of my profession, an unexecuted instrument. It had no legal force. It was a suggestion printed on bond paper. I set the pen down. I did not sign. I did not initial. I folded my hands on the table and I said clearly, at a volume that carried to every chair in the alcove, "Diane, I am not signing this, and I want to explain why, because everyone at this table deserves to hear it." The silence that followed lasted 6 seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The kitchen swing door opened and a server walked through with a tray of espresso cups, and the sound of clattering porcelain filled the gap. And then the door swung shut, and the silence returned. I said, "Grandpa recorded a payable-on-death designation at the Hargrove County Clerk's office on August 14th, 6 years before he died. The designation names me as sole recipient of the property at 1412 Linden Street. The recording number is 2018-4772. I can give you the microfilm reference if you want to verify it, but the county will confirm it to anyone who calls. The house is not in an estate. It is not in probate. It does not pass through a will. It passes by operation of the recorded designation directly to me. There is no trust to form. There is no settlement to negotiate. There is no family meeting required." Diane's face did not change. She kept the smile. She said, "Emily, sweetheart, that is a technicality. Grandpa talked to me. He said the house was for the family." I said, "Grandpa talked to me. He told me on the phone in August that he had gone to the county clerk and recorded the designation. He said, and I remember his exact words, 'You were the only one who never tried to take it from me while I was still breathing.' That was not a technicality, Diane. That was a decision, a recorded, filed, stamped, dated decision made by a man who knew exactly what he was doing." I turned to Paul Sorensen. I said, "The document you drafted omits the recorded beneficiary designation. It lists the property as an undistributed estate asset. It is not. The payable-on-death transfer supersedes any trust formation, any family settlement, and any quitclaim you could file from now until the end of the century. This document," I tapped the 3 pages with one finger, "is legally decorative. It has no enforceable content, and the notary block is empty, which means even if I signed it, no court in this county would recognize it without a commissioned notary present at the time of execution." Paul Sorensen stood up. He picked up his leather portfolio. He said, "I was not retained for a dispute. I was retained to facilitate a signing." He looked at Diane. He said, "The signing is not happening." He walked toward the service door. He did not look back. The swing door opened. It closed. The clatter of the kitchen swallowed his footsteps. Diane's face was gone. She said, "You cannot do this. You cannot sit there and take his house and leave this family with nothing." I said, "Diane, I am not taking anything. Grandpa gave me the house. You are trying to take it. There is a difference, and I want to be specific about what you were trying to take it for, because I saw the spreadsheet." The table went still. Tyler looked up. Gerald stopped chewing his bread. Diane's hand moved toward her handbag and stopped halfway. I said, "In Diane's handbag, in the service corridor, there is a 3-page spreadsheet titled Wilson Family Settlement Distribution, Draft 4. It itemizes $43,000 in business debt for Tyler, $28,400 in credit card debt for Diane and Craig, $61,000 in a second mortgage on the rental property. The total is $132,400. The column labeled Source of Resolution lists Grandpa's house on every single row. The estimated liquidation value is $110,000. Every dollar of it is spoken for. Tyler gets $40,000, Diane and Craig get $35,000, Gerald gets $15,000. There is a family reserve of $20,000. My name does not appear anywhere on that document except as the signature required to unlock it." Gerald set his bread down. He looked at Diane. He said, "Is that true?" Diane said, "It is a draft. It was a planning document. It is not binding." I said, "The note at the bottom of page 2 is in your handwriting, Diane. It says, once she signs the deed at dinner, she will not dare contest it in front of everyone. Tyler handles the title transfer Monday. Do not let her leave without signing." The silence this time lasted 9 seconds. I counted every one. The kitchen door opened, closed. A server refilled a water glass 3 chairs down. The ice clinked against the glass. The sound was very small and very loud. Diane said, "We are family. You are supposed to help us." I said, "You always told me family takes care of family. You said it when I co-signed Tyler's car loan. You said it when I covered the Gatlinburg rental. You said it when I drove 4 hours to move a couch. So why was I the only one who ever did? Why was family a one-directional payment, Diane? Why did I pay and you collect? And the moment I stopped paying, I wasn't family anymore. 3 years. 3 years of silence because I said I couldn't transfer $9,000 for a balloon payment on a house I didn't own. And now you need me to sign away the one thing that's mine, and suddenly there's a printed invitation and a speech about healing and a seat at the table, the wobbly one, the one by the service door, the one nobody else wanted. Diane said, "You are being dramatic." I said, "I'm being specific. There's a difference." A server appeared at Diane's elbow. She was young, maybe 22, holding a black leather check presenter. She set it in front of Diane. She said, "The master check for the table, ma'am, 14 covers, all food and beverage, service charge included." Diane opened the presenter. She looked at the number. Her jaw tightened. She pulled her Visa card from her handbag. She placed it in the presenter. She handed it back. The server walked away. 2 minutes passed. The server returned. She did not make eye contact. She set the presenter down. She said, "Ma'am, the card has been declined a second time. The bank is flagging the transaction. Do you have another form of payment?" Diane said, "Run it." The server said, "I can try once more, but the bank may hold the authorization." Diane said, "Run it." The server took the presenter. She walked away. The third time, the server did not come back. Marco came, the floor manager, the black vest, the reservation tablet. He set the presenter in front of Diane. He said, "Ma'am, the issuing bank has declined the transaction 3 times. The card is being held. I will need an alternate payment method, or I will need to contact our corporate office regarding the outstanding balance." Diane said, "That is not possible. I have credit available." Marco said, "The bank's response code indicates a hard decline, ma'am. Insufficient funds against the authorization amount. I cannot override it from this end." The table was silent. 14 people. 13 of them watching Diane. Tyler was looking at his phone. Gerald was looking at the tablecloth. Craig was looking at the wall. Diane picked up the presenter. She looked at the number inside. She closed it. She set it down. She picked it up. She set it down. Her hands were shaking. The brass pen she had given me rolled off the tablecloth and fell onto the tile floor. The sound was small, metallic, final. I stood up. I picked up my glass of tap water. There was 1 sip left. I drank it. I set the empty glass down on the table, aligned with the edge, centered on the playmat. I picked up the unsharpened pencil from my jacket pocket. I put it back. I buttoned my jacket. I looked at Diane. I said, "The house on Linden Street is mine. It was recorded 6 years ago. It will be mine tomorrow and next month and next year. You cannot sign it away. You cannot trust it. You cannot distribute it. You cannot liquidate it. And you cannot invite me to a 14-person dinner, seat me in the wobbly chair by the kitchen door, hand me a brass pen, and expect me to sign over the only thing I have because your son owes $43,000 and your credit card is maxed out. That is not family. That is a transaction. And the transaction is over." I walked toward the service door. I did not look back. I pushed through the swing door. The kitchen noise hit me. the clatter of plates, the hiss of the grill, a cook shouting an order in Spanish. I walked through the kitchen corridor. I walked past the hostess station. I walked past the ficus with the missing leaves. I walked out the front door into the parking lot. The March air was cold. The Honda was where I left it. I got in. I started the engine. I drove home. If you know what it feels like to finally stop paying for a chair at their table, type the word seat in the comments below. I drove home with the windows up and the heater on low. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. I parked in the lot behind my apartment, turned off the engine, and sat in the dark for 4 minutes. The steering wheel was cold under my palms. The parking lot was quiet except for the hum of a streetlight and the distant sound of a truck downshifting on the highway overpass. I went upstairs. I locked the door. I filled a glass with tap water, no ice, no lemon, and I sat on the couch and I drank it slowly, and the apartment was quiet, and the quiet was mine. The next morning, I blocked Diane's number. I blocked Craig's number. I blocked Tyler's number. I blocked Gerald's number. I blocked the family group email address. I did not write a letter. I did not leave a voicemail. I did not owe them a closing argument. The silence was not punishment. It was a property line. People used to building on your land call it abandonment when you put up a fence. I put up the fence. I went to work. I pulled 3 settlement statements from the queue. I checked the notary stamps. I aligned the edges of the files. I went home. Over the next 7 months, the consequences arrived the way they always do for people who build houses on other people's foundations. Craig's rental property went into foreclosure in October because the second mortgage payment was due and there was no house on Linden Street to liquidate. Tyler's business loan defaulted in January. Diane filed for a payment plan on the credit card debt in March. Gerald sold the timeshare in Myrtle Beach for 1/3 of what he paid. None of this surprised me. Debt does not negotiate. It accrues. It compounds. It waits. It is the most patient thing in the world, and it does not care about your family story. In April, 9 months after the dinner, I received a text from a number I did not recognize. It was Karen, Gerald's wife, the cousin who had laughed too loudly about the timeshare. She wrote, "Emily, I know I have no right to contact you. I was at that dinner. I saw what happened. I want to say I am sorry. I should have said something at the table. I should have said something years ago. I am sorry." I read it twice. I wrote back, "Thank you, Karen. That means something." She wrote back, "Is there anything I can do?" I wrote, "There is a nonprofit debt counseling service called Clear Path Financial on Elm Street. They do free intake consultations. No judgment, no fees. If Gerald needs help with the timeshare loss or the payment restructuring, they will sit down with him for an hour and build a plan." She wrote back 3 days later. She said, "I told Gerald. He said he would handle it himself, but thank you for the information." I said, "You are welcome." That was the last communication. I did not push. The door was open. He chose not to walk through it. That was his transaction to manage. This morning, I woke up at 6. I made coffee. Black, no sugar, no cream. I poured it into a chipped ceramic mug I bought at a garage sale for 50 cents, the same kind Ruth Kessler kept on her desk in the windowless records room. I sat at the kitchen table. The window faced the parking lot. The Honda was where I left it. The light came through the glass in a flat, clean rectangle. I drank the coffee. I did not check my phone. I did not check the news. I did not owe anyone an explanation for how I spent the morning. If you are sitting in a family right now that treats your kindness like a standing invoice, I want to tell you something plain, with no metaphor and no poetry. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say no without a speech. You are allowed to say no and leave the room. You are allowed to say no and drive home and lock your door and sit in the quiet. The word no is a complete sentence. You do not owe them a paragraph. You do not owe them a justification. You do not owe them a payment plan for your own exhaustion. A boundary is not a negotiation. It is a line. You draw it. They can be angry about it. They can call you selfish. They can say the family is hurt. They can remove you from the group chat. Let them. The missing is clean. The owing is an infection that never stops spreading. You do not owe anyone a seat at a table where your only function is to pay. Grandpa knew that. He sat in his bungalow on Linden Street for 40 years, and he watched his family circle, and he saw who came to visit and who came to collect. He went to the county clerk on a Tuesday in August. He filled out a form. He paid the filing fee. He walked home. He watched the baseball game. He made a decision, and he wrote it down. And the paper said what it said. That is all a boundary is. A decision written down that says what it says. I still have the house. I still have the Honda. I still have the job. I still have the unsharpened pencil in my jacket pocket, though I don't remember why I carry it anymore. Some mornings I pour the coffee and I think about Ruth, and I think about the windowless room, and I think about the way she said, "The paper is the truth," and I think, yes, the paper is the truth, and the truth does not need you to be loud. It just needs you to be there, steady, with your eyes open, reading the fine print while everyone else is ordering the wine. If you have had to build your own piece from scratch, type the word chosen in the comments. Subscribe if you are ready to stop shrinking to fit rooms you were never meant to pay for.